Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and in this video I want to show you my collection from the Collins Crime Club Detective Story Club Classic Collection. I love these reprints or facsimile editions. I think they are just beautiful books, but they are also classic mystery and detective fiction that deserves to be reprinted. So I wanted to show you what they look like first before I go into detail about each one. So they are hardcover books with facsimiles from original covers, and they've got this the man with the gun. He's wearing a mask, and it says the Detective Club. That is that's what they originally had when they first published these books. And then, if you take the dust jacket off, you get this beautiful cover that has the chain around the title and the author's name, and then it's linked with handcuffs, and there's, again, the man with the gun and the Detective Club. Now, the funny thing here is the Detective Club is not the same thing as the Detection Club. So the Detection Club was a group of writers that it started in the early 30s, and they met to discuss their work with each other, and they also collaborated on a number of mystery books. The Detective Club is a series put out by William Crime Classics of detective and mystery stories. So yeah, I just wanted to show you what that looked like. And then they all also have an introduction written by somebody. And so let's see, on the inside flap then you have the synopsis of the story, a description of the author, and then this Detective Story Club Classic is introduced by, and then it tells you who introduces it. So, what is this Detective Story Club for detective connoisseurs? The study of crime has always had a peculiar fascination. There is something thrilling about tracking down a murderer, something satisfying when justice has been done. Eminent men and women of every branch of life find detective stories a mental stimulus, and today there is no more fascinating form of reading. And that's a quote. The Detective Story Club was launched in 1929 to publish the best detective and mystery stories chosen for you by a select committee of experts. Combining classic bestsellers from the last half of the century with rising stars of the time and printed with sensational new jacket paintings, this forerunner to Collins' famous Crime Club was home to some of the world's most ingenious crime writers and the genre's most significant novels. Now, the man with the gun, we talked about him already. The distinguishing stamp that appeared on every book is back, and with him the chance to experience the classic books that influenced the golden age of crime fiction. So I love this collection, and I think that they are beautiful books, but aside from how they look, they're really important that they're reprinted for new generations to read and to love. So this one is The Cask by Freeman Wills Crofts, and this was published in 1920. The unloading of a consignment of French wine from the steamship Bullfinch is interrupted by a gruesome discovery in a broken cask, leaking sawdust and gold sovereigns. But when the shipping clerk returns with the police, the cask and its macabre contents have gone. Freeman Wills Crofts, the son of an army doctor who died before he was born, was raised in Northern Ireland and became a civil engineer. His first book, The Cask, was published in the summer of 1920, immediately establishing him as a new master of detective fiction. Scrupulously planting clues for the reader to find, he was continually praised for his flawless plotting, with Raymond Chandler describing him as the soundest builder of them all. Crofts was a founder member of the Detection Club and elected a Fellow of the Royal Society of Arts in 1939. And this edition is introduced by Freeman Wills Crofts himself in a unique preface from 1946 about the cask's origins. Okay, next up we have the Leavenworth Case by Anna Catherine Green. This is from 1878. It's also, she's an American writer. When the retired merchant Horatio Leavenworth is found shot dead in his mansion library, suspicion falls on his nieces, Mary and Eleanor, who stand to inherit his vast fortune. Their lawyer, Everett Raymond, infatuated with one of the sisters, is determined that the official investigator, Detective Ebenezer Gryce, should widen the inquiry to less obvious suspects. The Leavenworth Case, the first detective novel written by a woman, immortalized its author, Anna Catherine Green, as the mother of detective fiction. Admired for her careful plotting and legal accuracy, the book enjoyed enormous success both in England and America and was widely translated. It was republished by the Detective Story Club after Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, speaking at the 1928 Thanksgiving dinner at the American Society in London, remarked, "An American woman, a successor of Poe, Anna K. Green gave us the Leavenworth Case, which I still think one of the best detective stories ever written." This Detective Story Club classic is introduced by Dr. John Curran, who looks at how Anna Catherine Green was a pioneer who inspired a new generation of crime writers, in particular a young woman named Agatha Christie. So that's cool because Dr. John Curran is the guy who wrote that book about Jane Austen, 20 Questions. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that that's the same guy. Okay, and then we have The Bravo of London by Ernest Bramah. This is from 1934. In his dark little curio shop, Julian Juleby is weaving an extravagant scheme to smash the financial machinery of the world by flooding the Oriental market with forged banknotes. But this monster of wickedness has not reckoned on Max Carados, a suave and resourceful investigator whose visual impairment gives him heightened powers of perception that ordinary detectives overlook. Max Carados was a blind detective whose stories by Ernest Bramah appeared from 1914 alongside Sherlock Holmes in the Strand magazine, in which they often had top billing. Described by George Orwell as among the only detective stories since Poe that are worth rereading. The 25 stories were collected in 3 hugely popular volumes, culminating in a full-length novel, The Bravo of London, in which Carados engages in a battle of wits against a fiendish plot that threatens to overthrow civilization itself. So I think it's cool that this is the only full-length novel written about that character. This Detective Story Club classic is introduced by Tony Medawar, who investigates the impact on the genre of Bramah's blind detective and the relative obscurity of this, the only Max Carados novel. This edition also includes the sole uncollected short story, The Bunch of Violets. Okay, and then we have The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. This is the 150th anniversary edition. There is a quote from Dorothy L. Sayers on the front that says, "Probably the very finest detective story ever written." I love the back of this one. T.S. Eliot, the first and greatest of English detective novels. G.K. Chesterton, probably the best detective tale in the world. So, at a party celebrating her 18th birthday, Rachel Verinder wears a stunning yellow diamond she unexpectedly inherited from her uncle, unaware that it was plundered from a sacred Indian shrine 50 years earlier. When the jewel goes missing later that night, suspicions are raised and accusations fly in all directions. Sifting through divergent accounts of what happened, the indomitable Sergeant Cuff must find the Moonstone and the truth about its mysterious disappearance. Recognized as the very first detective novel in the English language, The Moonstone, 1868, earned Wilkie Collins the reputation of the godfather of the classic English detective story, with Dorothy L. Sayers declaring, "Nothing human is perfection, but the Moonstone comes about as near perfection as anything of the kind ever can." High praise. For 150 years, its intricate locked room puzzle and multiple narrators have influenced generations of mystery authors. This detective story crime classic reprints Collins' slightly abridged version of the novel, originally designed to make the long 19th century text more accessible. It is introduced by the iconic crime writing duo GDH and M. Cole, who analyzed the popularity of Wilkie Collins' groundbreaking sensation novel. And we have Nightmare by Lynn Brock. This is from 1932. Simon Whalley is an unsuccessful novelist who is gradually going to pieces under the strain of successive setbacks. Brooding over his troubles and driven to despair by the cruelty of his neighbors, he decides to take his revenge in the only way he knows how, by planning to murder them. Lynn Brock made his name in the 20s and 30s with the popular Colonel Gore mysteries, winning praise from fans and critics including Dorothy L. Sayers and T.S. Eliot. In 1932, however, Brock abandoned the formulaic Gore for a new kind of narrative, a psychological thriller, in the vein of Francis Isles' recent sensation, Malice Aforethought. Advertised by Collins as one of the most remarkable books that we have ever published, the unconventional and doom-laden Nightmare provided readers with a disturbing portrayal of what it might take to turn an outwardly normal man into a cold-blooded murderer. This Detective Story Club classic is introduced by Rob Reef, author of the John Stableford Golden Age Mysteries, who finds philosophy at the heart of Brock's landmark crime novel. All right, and then we have The Middle Temple Murder by J.S. Fletcher. This is the 100th anniversary edition. This was originally published in 1919. An unidentified elderly gentleman is found bludgeoned to death in London's Middle Temple, that enclave of justice between Fleet Street and the Thames. After due investigation, the police conclude that it was merely a case of robbery. But Frank Spargo, a young journalist who senses a scoop, and Inspector Rathbury of New Scotland Yard, who doesn't, soon unearth fresh clues and join forces to solve an intricate and intriguing mystery. Joseph Smith Fletcher was a British writer and fellow of the Royal Historical Society who had studied law before turning to journalism. Dubbed the Dean of Mystery Writers, his literary career spanned some 200 books, with the seminal The Middle Temple Murder acclaimed as one of the genre's defining novels, popular with both sides of the Atlantic, with readers, critics, and U.S. presidents alike. This Detective Story Club classic is introduced by the detective fiction historian Nigel Moss, celebrating 100 years since the book's first publication. It includes the bonus of Fletcher's earlier short story, The Contents of the Coffin, his precursor to the full-length The Middle Temple Murder. And then finally we have The Paddington Mystery by John Rode. This was first published in 1925. When Harold Merrifield returns home from a nightclub in the early hours, he is startled by the gruesome discovery of a corpse on his own bed. Who is he and how did he get there? Unconvinced by the inquest's verdict of death from natural causes, Harold determines to investigate the matter for himself and seeks the help of Professor Priestley, an academic with a reputation for solving curious affairs by the simple but unusual method of logical reasoning. John Rode was a pseudonym for the author Cecil John Charles Street, 1884 to 1964, an ex-army major who turned to writing detective novels. Renowned for inventing some of the most ingenious murders in crime fiction, he produced 4 novels a year for 37 years. And it was the Paddington Mystery that first introduced Rode's genius detective, Dr. Lancelot Priestley, who went on to appear in another 70 books. That is amazing. Wow. This Detective Story Club classic is introduced by crime writing historian John Medawar, who looks at how Cecil Street, writing as John Rode, Miles Burton, and Cecil Way became one of the most prolific and popular British authors of the Golden Age. So there you have it. That is my collection of Detective Story Club classics. I hope you enjoyed that. Have you read any of those books? I would love to talk about them with you in the comment section down below. Do any of those books sound intriguing to you? I would love to talk about that as well. and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.